أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. Last week we had discussed that when everything was, I'm just giving the gist, when everything was was compressed in the singularity, Ratkan, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I peeled it off, فَفَتَقْنَاهُمَا. Then it was peeled off. The first of all energy was released, and that energy was the subparticles. Those subparticles came together and they started to form the atoms, and that was the beginning of formation of turabun, the inorganic material. And if we look at the table of elements which are arranged in the order of weight, then we find that it starts with hydrogen. Scientists say that it started with hydrogen. And we had also seen last time that when hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon, these four elements were formed, these four atoms of these elements were formed, then further process of formation of teen, Sulalatam min teen, and other processes started. And we had seen that 95% of life, in talking of life, 95% of life depends on these initial four atoms: hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon. And when hydrogen, oxygen came together, they formed water. And when they came in contact with carbon, then hydrogen cyanide, then hydrocyanide was formed. And when these two elements, these are considered to be the Adam and Eve of life. Then another molecule also formed, these molecules, water, hydrocyanide, this ammonia, and then methane, NH3 and NH4. When these elements, when these substances or the molecules of these substances were formed, and when they combined together, they started the beginning of the material which was to further form longer chains, teen lazibin, and the sequence in the chain, which is called code, that gave birth to the code of life. That is the genetic code. So this was the sequence. This was just for recapitulation, which I mentioned as we discussed last time. Some of these single-celled organisms, initially as single atom was formed, similarly single cell of life, which is called single-celled organism, that was formed. And these were marooned in the pools when the sea retreated. There was rain for hundreds of years, and when the water receded into the seas, went into the seas, and these single-celled organisms which remained marooned on the earth, and they remained there for hundreds of years, then they created, and the atmosphere of oxygen was created above the globe. Then further progress was made in the formation of other forms of life and their survival on this planet. NASA's hunch is that planets around nearby stars could be populated by similar material which was originated at that time, and for which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word Badr, which was initiated originally. That matter must be present even today. Why they say this? That whenever, whatever experiments they have conducted in the space, or they receive sometimes the meteorites which crash into the earth, or the material they brought from moon, or the experiments they are conducting on Mars, and that shows that there are signs of life, and the signs of life are in that primitive bacteria, are the single-celled organisms which are still there. They are still surviving in that earthen material. Word earth has been used for all the earthen material of the universe in singular, earth, whereas Samavat refers to the arrangement of the globes which were formed from the original material. So Samavat as plural refers to the arrangement of globes in one sama, and also it refers to the arrangement of seven Samavat, Tevaka, in order, one above the other, befitting each other. And that served as the basis from which complex multicellular plants, animals that inhabit the earth today, that evolved. Now, this is NASA's reference. Moon soil is impregnated with nitrogen, and it is considered, according to Japanese scientists, that that nitrogen was originally taken by the moon from the sun when it separated. And this has been, there are a lot of, there's a lot of other material also, but I've referred to the material which appear in the journal Nature. Atmospheric gases, methane, now we are moving into another phase, that is organic. Atmospheric gases, methane, ammonia, which I mentioned earlier, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen cyanide washed down from the atmosphere into the oceans. When the rains continued for hundreds of years, these materials were initially found, these substances were initially found in the atmosphere because it was gaseous. Now the rain brought them down. It washed them down from the atmosphere. It came to the earth, and when the water receded, it went into the oceans, where salts and minerals started forming, and they were collected there. That is why we find that the ocean is salty, it is saltish. Dissolution of gases and minerals into oceans was an important event for origin of life on Earth. If you have traveled, those who are from Pakistan, if you have traveled from Karachi while going to Hyderabad on the superhighway, on your left is Kirthar range of mountains. It's a very big range of mountains which goes into Iran, and then it goes further. If you have the chance, if you had the chance to go into those mountains, they're very high, you will find that still there are remnants of sea life. So sea was not at the present level where we find it today in Karachi. Even these mountains were under the sea. The water has receded. So it's a very huge phenomenon spreading over millions of years, that if you go there, you still find with your naked eye, you still find the remnants of the sea life. And the petrified jungles, that is a wonder. Petrified jungles in those mountains. Allah has created every animal from water, with water, from liquid. If we read it at different places, it has different meanings. It is from plasma, it also has the meaning of water. Allah has created everything, every animal from water. There are some that creep on their bellies, some that walk on two legs, and some that walk on four. This shows that all these animals who are walking on four, who are walking on legs, who are walking on bellies, who are creeping, all of them were created on this earth. They were not dropped from the sky, they were created on this earth. And the word nazal has different meanings. It also means the development which took place on this earth, evolution and the development. Allah creates what He wills. For verily Allah has power over all things. And these are the references to the ayat references. Water makes 60 to 90% of it of living organisms. It is different in different organisms, but it ranges from 60 to 90%. It is water. 3/4 of Earth's surface is covered with water. And every molecule is measured. All the time, when air, the elements of air, water, they are all in commotion. They are in movement. They are all the time in motion, from sea to the mountains and from mountains to the sea. But still, the quantities which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has measured, that at what temperature, what quantity of water has to remain in the seas, has to remain in the rivers, has to remain in the lakes, has to remain on the surface of the earth, or it has to remain in the deposits on the mountains. It is all measured to the molecule. From the time free atoms of hydrogen and oxygen in the beginning, when the hydrogen and oxygen was free, then it washed down, it became water, it became hydrogen cyanide, and then it went into other substances. But still, the need for hydrogen and oxygen on this planet remains all the time. All the time it is needed. Every minute it is needed, and every moment this is needed. So how we get it? Subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has His own plan for this. The original hydrogen, oxygen went into the seas and went into water, went into substances. But still, for life, it is needed every moment. So there is a cycle. There is not only a cycle of water, which is maintained by the temperature, and Allah has created Bahrain, that they don't mix, they don't go on one side. There's a partition between them, that is the temperature. Similarly, for these elements, hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and others, which are needed all the time, every moment for living things, we cannot breathe otherwise. We cannot live. There is a cycle, and that goes on. And look at the measurement. If the composition of the air is changed slightly, nitrogen is removed, which is in a very small quantity, everything will burn out. Look at the calculations, the proportions, which are being maintained since billions of years, and everything is in movement. Water thus took the role of a key which opened the door to life. وَجَلْنَا كُلَّ شَيْءٍ وَجَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ. Stirred, it was stirred. It was a key. It gave a spark. And how it gives the spark? There is a difference in the there's a difference in the ionic charge of 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen in the water. Because of this ionic difference, difference in the ionic charge, which is because of the difference in the ionic charge of oxygen and hydrogen in water, a molecule of water works like a battery, as you put a very small battery in your watch. So when that small battery, a molecule, goes into the cell, a living cell, it provides it a battery, a charge, an energy. And usually it has been seen that this battery may last for 7 to 14 days. But in order to keep it healthy, in order to keep the cell healthy and working properly, this battery needs to be changed within 7 days, before 7 days. It has to be changed. If it is not changed, then the battery starts dying down. And if it is not changed in 14 days, then within 14 days, then it becomes a case of dehydration because the water molecule is not working and it is also being ejected. It is being drained out. So there are so many causes, and the living cell dies. If the living cells start dying, then the body starts dying, and the body will die. And Allah kept His control post of life. Arsh is a power matrix. Even at that time, when everything from at the time of Big Bang, when the subparticles came out and they formed a hot soup of the initial material from which the inorganic material was formed. So here it means the more the first form of liquefaction from those gaseous materials, that is Ma, and Allah subhanahu, and everything was in commotion. And scientists say that it was in chaos because when the scientists cannot define anything, they say that it's a state of chaos. It was such an entire universe in the state of gases, in the state of liquefaction, in the state of molecules, in the state of ions. Then it was a state of chaos for the scientists because they cannot define it. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that it was under my arsh. My arsh was on it, my control was on it. It was under my control, even at that time. And Allah made from water everything living. There are different translations. I have just given some of them. These are different translations and different explanations by different translators, which I have given here. So I'm not going through each of them. To begin with, gases and minerals. The initial inorganic material, the turab, dissolved in ocean. I've already mentioned that is how the salts and minerals were created. They dissolved in the ocean. They reacted with each other, and with water also they reacted to form early organic compounds. Now their dissolution in water, and carbon is there, which I mentioned earlier, along with hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon. Now, the organic compounds of these elements, the complex compounds, they started forming. There were different compounds which were formed. I am not going into those details. Subsequent chemical evolution. Now, the first evolution, in the cosmic evolution, cosmic evolution is a conglomeration, a combination of various evolutions. The first one was the physics, then comes chemistry, and then will come biochemistry. The subsequent chemical evolution led to emergence of most complex organic compounds, which became precursors of the units of life. From those organic compounds, the molecules which ultimately became the basis of life, those are formed. It is He, Allah, who created you from dust, from inorganic material, and this is evolution. After formation of inorganic matter, inorganic chemistry, water played the most important role in origin of life. The interaction of water, I've already mentioned it. Allah has created every moving, living creature from water. These are different ayat. This is not one ayat. There are different ayat, which are here the reference 24, 45, and here you will find it is 40, 67. There are so many ayat. It's not one ayat. It may appear that some same words are repeating 21, 30, 11, 7. So there are a lot of ayat in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has referred to, which provide clues, to the explanations which we find in the evolution. And I had said in the beginning that evolution is just a tiny part of the process of falah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the universe. And falah is part of rububiyat, Allah's rububiyat. And rububiyat is the same, comes from the same Lord, is the same who is also the creator, Allah. There is Wahdaniyat of Uluyat, Wahdaniyat of Allah, and Rabb, He is the same. Allah has created every moving living creature. These are the references. Now, combination of inorganic material, inorganic matter, turabun, and water gave us clay. Teen. This created teen. When water was mixed with turabun, it is He, Allah, who created you from clay. Another ayah. The Quran further highlights that life came into existence not just from a lump of clay. It's not just a lump of turaban or a lump of clay or any shape of clay, but from extracts of clay. Sulalatam min teen. It is not the lump of earthen material or any shape of earthen material, but it is the extracts of clay. And this is the iron. Chief factor on the stage of life. When water became available from hydrogen and oxygen, now the chief factor which will play part in the organic transformation. Chief factor on the stage of life set by water was carbon. Water used carbon as the chief factor in the next drama which will take place and which will give birth to the organic material. And this carbon is very versatile. I will show that. It is extremely versatile. Carbon. Human mind is insufficient to fully understand the potential of this item, carbon. We are not yet able, the scientists are not yet able to understand the full potential of carbon. 108 of 109 elements. At the time when I had written this book, it was 109, but there are new editions also. So out of 109 atoms at that time, elements at that time, 108 form about 300,000 compounds. 108 compounds, 108 elements make 300,000 compounds. About this figure is changing every time the progress is being made, whereas only carbon, one atom, only carbon as element can take part in the formation of 1.7 million compounds. 108 on one side and the remaining one carbon on the other side, and the carbon is so versatile that it can form 1.7 million compounds. It is so versatile. And scientists have not come to the end. They can't find the last number. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you can't count my kalma, the formulations, the formulas which He has made in chemistry, in life. These are kalma. DNA is a kalma. It is a written word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Gene is a written word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are kalma. Isa alayhi salam was a kalma of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything is written. Carbon chains are not exclusively. Now the carbon has the capacity to form chains. Lazibin. From teen, turabun, teen, sulalatan min teen. Now sulalat from sulalatan min teen, lazibin. They can stick together. They can form bonds. They can make chains. but the carbon has a very special quality of making special bonds. Special bonds means they are not only linear, they make bonds in different special arrangements, like in benzene, for example. Carbon chains are not exclusively linear, but they branch off and form polygons in different directions, in different spatial directions. The shortest being formed by two carbon atoms. Now look at this. If the carbon has the capacity to form 1.7 million compounds, and it has also, I'm emphasizing also, the capacity to make bonds, make arrangements in special arrangements, not only linear, then how many kalmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can be formed if the carbon has the capacity, even the two atoms of carbon come together and they can join, they can combine. There's no end to it. We can't count. We can't find the last number, even only in the case of carbon only. We cannot find it. What to talk of all the kalmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no end to it. Despite the unavailability of an exact figure on the number of carbons that make up the longest carbon chain, we can talk about a chain with 70 links. The scientists have confirmed, worked, they are still working that they can make 70 links with the same carbon. 70 links. The atom that can form longest chain after the carbon atom is the silicon atom, forming 6 links. And look at carbon, look at the difference. And we don't know the whole chemistry which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. And I'm not a scientist, I'm just quoting. I've just brought references before you. These are the references. When the carbon is combined as different chains, different substances are formed, which means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the power to create any substance. If He can create any formula, any kalma, He can create any substance, He can create any chain. When He can create any chain, He can create any form of life. This is the connotation. He can create any form of life because He can create any sequence in the chain. Since He can create any sequence of the chain, not only in sequence, but He can create any number of the codes and any number of the formulations in the chain. There's no end to it. End to the kalmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No. Consider Allah augments upgradation, increase in the creation, whatever He wills. He may create, He may augment, He may upgrade, He may change, He may transfer, He may transfigure, He may transmute, He may do anything. This is chemistry. And this is biochemistry. What He wills. This is from Surah Fatir. Carbon played a very important role in the evolutionary history of living matter. Carbon compounds provided basis for synthesis of numerous molecules which constituted a structural framework of living bodies. When we are talking about spatial arrangements and we are talking about the sequence and we are also talking about the chain and we are talking about the different arrangements in the chain, then what we are talking about? We are talking about basically the structural framework of living bodies. Ijnahatan. In this ayat, in this surah, in this ayat, but ijnahatan has been used that He can create any number of living bodies in any dimensions, any number of dimensions. There's no bar on it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can create any body in any number of forms, which means in any number of dimensions. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's malaika, when we talk about malaika, they have been formed at the level of energy. Energy is subparticle. Subparticle is both matter and energy both. It may be subparticle when we are referring to it as matter, and it may be vehicle when we are referring to it as a frequency. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the power to create malaika as matter from those subparticles, as robots composed not of atoms, but composed of the circuitry of subparticles. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the power to make other circuitries from the vehicle. It's the same thing, particle or the vehicle, but when we are referring to it as subparticle, it is matter. You may call it robot, you may call it malaika. But when you refer to it, that to the circuitry, which is a vehicle, it is a force. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the force, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can design the force, can shape the force even, the waves, the vehicles, the frequencies in such a manner that in a circuitry, that force works according to the instructions, according to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So malaika as the circuitry of vehicles or as the circuitry of subparticles, the same thing, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can assign them different functions. Carbon compounds are therefore called organic compounds because they have been formed along with the carbon from the organic material as organic compounds. Extract of clay, sulalatam min teen. Sulalatam min teen was provided by eventual evolution of these compounds of carbon. More extract of clay came into play. More atoms were created, more substances were created, more compounds were created, and the evolution was taking place into later and complex compounds leading to the formation of teen lazabin, sticking substance capable of carrying code of life. What is code of life? It is the sequential arrangement of those different substances which were formed. And today we see, for example, 4 basic substances, amino acids. They come together to form a chain. And the arrangement in that chain, ATCG or CTGA, that makes a code. Arrangement of that sequence is the code, and that is the code of life. That is the code of life. Verily, Allah evolved them out of sticky clay, teen lazwan. And with this ayat, I'll close this. And indeed, Allah evolved man from finest chain extract of clay, weight clay. All these meanings are given in the root of that triliteral root of that word. Finest chain extract of weight clay. Then Allah made him a small poured out sperma genital. Then that was evolved further into sperma genital. Sperma genital consists of 4 liquids. I'm not going into those details, which contains the sperm. The sperma genital in a firmly established conducive lodging in the mother, in the womb of the mother, when the zygote was formed, when the union took place between the sperm and the ovum, and then the zygote, it takes place in the fallopian tubes, and it travels from the fallopian tubes to the ovum, to the womb, and in the womb, it attaches itself. Zygote attaches itself to the roof of the womb. It attaches itself to the roof. And that is the most secure place, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, firmly established, conducive environment where it can lodge itself. Then Allah created, evolved that zygote further of the small poured out spermagenital zygote, a zygote. Alakan. Zygote is alakan. Khalaqal insana min alak. That is there, it is referring to the zygote. Thus we created, evolved zygote into embryo. Now this is gynecology. Zygote into embryo. It is taking place even today in every conception, after conception. Thus we created, evolved the embryo into a majestic, compact skeleton. This is Quran. Thus, we dress the majestic, compact skeleton with mutually firm, supportive flesh, tendons, ligaments, linings, interstitial material. Flesh is not only just flesh. The interstitial material is the finest material. Therefore, we brought it forth as final creation. When nafakh, with nafakh, final creation. When ruh is nafakh, the command is nafakh. When the command is installed, nafakh, ruh is the command. Kul ruh min amr rabbi. It is the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is a command. So ever blessed, exalted is Allah, the best, noblest of all makers, and that at length you will die. In spite of all these things, this fineness, we are made to die. Every shay is created to change. Every living thing is made to die. Again, on the day of judgment, you will be raised up. And there is a science how it will be raised up. That is also a reference in the Quran. Now, these are so many ayat. With this, I come to today's end of today's topic. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzat amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Next time, we'll see this. So how these complex compounds will form sugars, glycerin, fatty acids, amino acids, and nitrogen bases. So with this, I end this. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzat amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Thank you very much.
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك اللهم لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت. اللهم ادخلنا برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين. اللهم اخرجنا من ظلمات الجهل والوهم إلى نور العلم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. اللهم بفضلك ورحمتك على كلمة الحق والدين. اللهم انصر الإسلام وعز المسلمين يا أكرم الأكرمين. Oh Allah, spread your mercy upon us, shower us with your blessings, increase our knowledge, grant us forgiveness, and reward us with the company of the prophets in the Firdaus al-A'la. Oh Allah, forgive our parents and all our friends and relatives who have passed away. Oh Allah, make their graves a garden from heaven and grant them the Firdaus al-A'la. Oh Allah, we have many of our friends and relatives who are sick. We have our son Ma'raj, our daughter Aisha Wani, and many others. Oh Allah, grant all of them full and speedy recovery. Oh Allah, guide our children, protect them, and make them righteous. Oh Allah, we have many of our brethren who are in Palestine, in Sudan, in Libya, in many parts of the Muslim world. Oh Allah, they facing a barbaric enemy, unjust world, and the complacent Muslim nation. Oh Allah, grant them victory, heal their trauma, protect their helpless, and then remove their suffering and grant them peace and prosperity. Oh Allah, we ask you every name you have elected for yourself, that none of us leave this gathering, but his pains have been relieved, his worries have been removed, his debts have been paid, his weaknesses have been concealed, his sins have been forgiven, and his needs have been fulfilled. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على خير المرسلين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.